For the people who already know, CABI stands for Center for Agriculture and Bioscience. We try to lose less and feed more, lose less of any crops and make sure we feed more people around the world. We are a not-for-profit organization established in 1910, excuse me about my voice, by a United Nations treaty. We focus a lot on agriculture and environment. We own by 48 member countries. We spread all over the world, from developing and developed nations. As you can see, this is the countries that owns CABI. So we have different departments, international development. I suggest you go online and look for something called Plant-Wise by CABI. It gives you a hint of what we do in international development. In publishing, we have a lot of different types of content, from ebooks, e-journals, print books, bioprotection portals, PRA pest risk analysis tools, e-learning. As you can see here, ebooks in compendia and online resources. We publish a lot of books, print and online. And we do also have CAB Academy. It covers the online content. Currently, we have the crop pest diagnosis and the crop pest management. Basically, it teaches how to diagnose any issues in terms of pests and also the standards on how to manage that pest. This is the sort of type of content in our databases called journals, conference proceeding, grey literature, books, and so on. And this is the subjects, the main subjects that we cover. As you could see, animal sciences, plant science, forestry, food, human sciences and tourism, aquatic sciences and environmental science. If I go and try to have the sub-subjects, you could see here animal sciences, and we have some sub-subjects, plant sciences, forestry, aquatic sciences, environmental sciences, food sciences, and this is our sort of sub-subjects, diet, obesity, food composition, quality, etc. Human sciences, we talk nutrition and food sciences and so on. And then the tourism, sustainable tourism, ecotourism, sports. And this is sort of a coverage, geographical coverage, where we get our content from. So I could find North America and Europe, Middle East. We've got some content from Africa and Southeast Asia and South and Central America. That is it. I'm so sorry to be quick, simply because many of you were here last time. Before I give the micro to Dr. Said, please make sure to write your name, like Alfa Dave said, your name, your email, and your institution. Have a good one.
Thank you so much, Brahim, for the nice and quick introduction to CABI. I enjoyed it again, as usual. And welcome everybody to this third session of our series on writing grant proposals. In this series, we are breaking down the process of writing grant proposals into 4 different steps, trying to share some thoughts about each of those steps each session. Our station today is going to be about preparing budget and GANT chart and a project management plan. Just a quick reminder for you of what we have covered over the last 2 sessions, just to make sure that we are following the same thread of thoughts while we write the content that we are focusing on today. Starting with the call selection and the proposal alignment, moving into writing compelling research section, then putting pieces together in terms of budget, what we need to buy and how much it costs, and also the Gantt chart, what are the activities and when actually they are being done, and also the project management plan. Very briefly, in the first session, we talked about why we should apply for grants, how to select the call, how to align the call. Simply, we talked about professional reasons and financial reasons for applying for grants. We talked about the call selection, how we should be aware of the announcement schedule, the call objectives, the eligibility requirements, and the proposal guidelines, and we called it our treasure trove. We talked about alignment of the research topic, alignment of the proposal title, alignment of the research team, and then alignment of the proposal abstract. In the second session, we covered the research background, objectives, and approach. We talked about the research background or introduction. We talked about how we should appropriately define the research problem that we are trying to address, highlight its impacts using clear language, providing a state-of-the-art review of the literature in this area, and identify knowledge gaps. And then for each of those knowledge gaps, we introduce our proposed research to fill in that gap, and then putting pieces together to give a clear idea about what exactly the research we are proposing. The next step was the research objectives, and we talked about how we translate the knowledge gaps that we have identified in the literature review and transform them into main objectives and break those main objectives down into specific objectives. And we finished last session with the research approach. We talked about the statement or summary of proposed research, which is basically an expanded list of research activities that are needed to achieve the objectives, main and specific. And then we talked about how we expand this into the detailed research approach and methodology. And we talked here that in this section, it's where we actually need to put most of the information, most of the details about the methodologies. And we talked about the use of visuals, figures, histograms, charts, all visuals that we could implement or include to assist people understand what we're trying to do. In this section too, we talked about how we should refer to what is needed to conduct each of those activities, and what the infrastructure we have, what instruments we have, and what exactly we need in order to get those steps done. And this is a very good introduction to the budget, because here you lay out what exactly is needed and why, and then in the budget you can list those and categorize them and put the price tag for each one of them. And you don't want to you don't want the reviewers to get surprised by some items in the budget that they have not seen a reason for in the detailed research approach. So this is the bridge between the research approach and the budget, which is including the pieces or the instruments and all the stuff that you will need to spend money on, and clearly place them in the context of the research that you are trying to conduct. So today it makes a lot of sense now that we're going to talk about preparing budget. Then we're going to move to Gantt chart, and then to the project management. So when we prepare budget, we need to talk about the template that we're going to use, the item categorization, how we should balance the details, the allowed maxima, and how we should double check ourselves on the math. When you apply for grants, you need to produce a well-calculated budget, not just calculated budget. You want it to be clear to reviewers that you have a well-calculated budget. You spend enough time thinking, putting together the budget and calculating every single piece of it. The first and the key advice is we need to adhere to any template provided. Because that saves us and saves the reviewers a lot of time when we use the template that they have provided. Especially in most cases, they might provide information in those templates. If you take a look here, you will see, you know, some constructions. I'm sorry, some instructions on what exactly the items should look like, and in some cases some explanations of what you actually could put there. What if the proposal? What if I couldn't find a template for that call, for the budget for the call? Well, it never hurts to ask. You know, you can ask for it to see if they can provide one. If not, then probably you might communicate someone who have received the grant fund before, and maybe they could provide you with one. So try to use the template provided by the funding agency. Also, we need to adhere to the categories of the items in the template. We should place each item we need to do in the best category it fits in, because that saves you a lot of you know, revision and going back and forth. Also, if the competition is really high, then your scores are gonna be high. So probably it would be wise to spend enough time on this part. Thank you. Please do not use the annotation so we don't distract each other. So for salaries, typically they are put in a separate category. Sometimes they call it incentives or salaries, depending on the funding agency. Usually there are limits for how much salaries could be received, or the proportion of the budget that could be allocated to salaries. There are also guidelines on what are the type of salaries that are expected for different research team members, depending on their qualifications. So make sure you double check those, and you actually use the appropriate you know, range for monthly incentive. And for that, it's very wise to use something that is below the maximum, but not too much below, just to not seem underestimating yourself. So try to be, you know, nearby the maximum, but not actually at the maximum. And again, if you have like team members, try to be fair to them, you know, especially graduate students and undergraduate students. One of the things that we have talked about in the alignment of the research team, we talked about how the research team should be multi-generational, meaning that you need a consultant probably who's going to be someone who's superior in the let's say the subject area or within the department, or someone who probably could provide a lot of insight in terms of how to get things done logistically. If you need technicians, put them manual labor, put them here. Probably you could think of undergraduate students like working undergraduate students, research C, bachelor students, research B, research A. These categories might differ from one grant to another, but overall, you need to have some sort of a multi-generational and if needed, interdisciplinary research team structure. And make sure you pay close attention to the percentage of time spent on the project. For example, if you have some students, there are limits for how many hours they can work per week, or a proportion of their time. Pay attention to these details. If you have a teaching faculty, maybe a lot of research hours are not going to fit there. So these are the kind of things that we need to pay attention to, and also the number of months that you probably will need that team member in is another key component of how well calculated your budget is. If you're going to need someone to provide some experience at a certain stage of the research project, probably it's not going to be wise to put that person on budget all the time, because these are the kind of things that probably the reviewers are going to go back and double check. If you're going to need someone to run, let's say, a simulation model or something like that at a later stage in the project, it may not make sense to have them on board. In terms of salary or incentives from the first month, and so on. So that's the first category for salaries and incentives. The equipment, usually the equipments require like a separate breakdown, and additionally they actually require some justification. Not only you break them down what exactly you need, but you also say why you need it. And if sometimes if you don't know how to describe why you need it, you can describe what happens if you don't have it. So whatever makes sense to you, you can use there. So and the equipment breakdown is a very nice bridge to your research, detailed research approach, because here you put the items that you actually stated that they are needed in the research, the detailed research approach, and you put the justification very briefly here, and you have more space here to emphasize why you selected this let's say model of an instrument over another one, why you are using a certain instrument with a certain type of head or with a certain sensor, why not to buy the other types. So you have more space here to do so. So that's for the equipment. And one of the key advices for the writing the costs is to actually make sure that you include all the costs. Sometimes you when you search the cost of an instrument, you get the price tag for it, but actually to get it and to receive it, it's going to cost you more than that. So it makes a lot of sense that you try to find out how much the instrument costs and actually how much it's going to cost you to receive it, adding more of the intermediary costs there too. So these are very key points when we write a separate breakdown for the equipments. Expendable supplies and materials, and here the experience helps a lot in what to include here and what not. You have some stationary components. You have miscellaneous laboratory supplies like chemicals, kits, glassware, etc. And so having someone with prior experience, it helps a lot in this case on what to put here and what to move somewhere else. In terms of the travel costs, again, you might see some maximum mentioned for that. Usually you get the air tickets and per diem, and that's a governmental rate that applies to to different parts of the world. And usually governments have that fixed across all sectors that are paid with governmental money, or governmental fund. So this is something that's not negotiable. You don't negotiate per diem. You just use the number. Also, you could get some transportation funding, especially for the domestic transportation. Although they put here, actually the domestic transportation is going to be expected to be, using regular transportation, maybe not air tickets if the country is not that big. Maybe if you are in the United States, or if the project is an international project, maybe you can have some. I mean, if the domestic travel distance is huge, that might justify air tickets, but otherwise it's not expected there. You could include conference registration too, and use the air tickets to participate in a conference, in a combination with domestic, transportation that could cover everything probably for your conference participation, or the conference participation of your students. And as you know, for each item of these, you just put the details and then you add them up to put the total there. The other direct costs, these are things are related maybe to computers, softwares, printers, all the IT related stuff. And if you're gonna produce a report, or maybe print some printed material to be handed out, or maybe if you're gonna produce something like an extension document that will be circulated, or maybe a stakeholders report that you will circulate, or probably if you're going to provide training, either training provided to the research team or provided by the research team. And I encourage you to do both. Make sure that the research team is receiving training, which means that the project is going to be a learning and development opportunity for them. And also the research team is going to provide some training and or workshops to the target audience, or the target groups, to make sure that there is a nice combination between knowledge acquisition and knowledge dissemination, and that you place the research team in that sweet spot where you claim that the research team is gonna improve and actually is gonna have a development opportunity by attending training, and at the same time they will participate in knowledge dissemination by organizing workshops and training. And also, this is another soft skill that probably you will will be really appreciated when you add to the repertoire of the research team through your project. Maybe additional minor construction work or rental of land or equipment, etc. So these are the type of some different types of the other direct costs that cannot fit within the items above or the categories above. So you add them up, and then depending on how the budget is calculated for this particular project, they tell you how to sum up all the items, how to calculate the modified total direct costs, and how to calculate the indirect costs, which is going to go to the hosting institute to support your research project. And depending on the institution regulations, you might have some different, rules on how this money could be used. Typically, the researcher doesn't have any control over the indirect costs. In some institutions, you might suggest spending some of it in some of the, let's say, the infrastructure related to supporting your project, but that's not mandatory for the institution. So if you need to use that money, or if the university is gonna need to use that money to do something to be able to host your project, it's very, very important to communicate that early on to your institution, and don't wait until you make the transaction is being made to the university's budget, and then you request that they spend it on something that you have not mentioned before. So communication with the hosting institution is very important when it comes to the indirect costs. If you add these items together, you get the total of the entire year. So most of the grant proposals require separate, budget page for every year, just to make sure that things are clear and break down over time, and they know how the money is going to be distributed over time. So that's the budget. One of the key advices too is you need to be careful with how much information you provide. You need to find a sweet spot between not being too deep and too detailed in things that you don't have control over, and by that you get yourself into troubles, and also you don't want to seem not to have provided enough details in such a way that they feel like, well, maybe they don't seem to know enough about their topic or what is needed. So you need to balance the details. You need to provide enough details to prove your competence, but not too much details to get yourself into troubles. And again, experience here is key. That's why including maybe a consultant or someone who's ahead in the career, especially for those who are just starting or writing their first grant proposal, is a very wise move, because it helps a lot. It helps a lot. We have to abide by the allowed maxima. We must not exceed them. They're not going to pay. We must not exceed them at all. So we should use or be a little bit below the maximum, and I would suggest you to be below the maximum indicated for each category. You know, depending on the rules of the funding agency, you might not be able to allocate budget from one category to another. So you need to be careful with how far you are from the maximum. And if you anticipate that the prices you have might not be realistic, probably you should be a little bit low. In case you can allocate budget from one item to another, you still fall below the maximum allowed. Don't round numbers. Don't round numbers. It's not a good idea, because if you look up an instrument and you find the price there, use that number. If you want to add some additional proportion of that price to cover the intermediary costs for the company that will import that instrument and deliver it to you, you can do that. But again, maybe you can use a proportion of the price as a factor. In some cases, some people might use like 10%, 15%, in some cases 20% of the price, just to make sure that they will have enough to cover the intermediary costs. And in all cases, you can just use the actual price, multiply it by that factor that will be allocated to the intermediary, and then put that number as it is. Yes, it is easier to add numbers in thousands or hundreds and stuff like that. It's okay. Maybe you don't have to go to fractions. I mean, to cents or something like that. Maybe you don't have to do so, but at least don't round things up, because this is one of the signs that the budget is not actually well calculated. It's actually a rounded budget. It's an estimated budget. It's not a real one. So this is one of the signs that could be easily picked up by reviewers, and they actually don't like that. It's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. Math is math. So you need to double check yourself. Use your calculator, use an Excel sheet, and add numbers on the Excel sheet before you move them into Word to submit the budget. And again, ask someone else to double check you on that. If you have an accountant in the research team, make sure that they have enough time to double check the math. So it's very important to double check the math. It's not gonna look good if you are underestimating your budget, especially if the difference is gonna throw you over the maximum allowed in any of the categories. So double check the math, which means that you need to start early, as we talked together about in the two previous sessions. That's why you need to prepare ahead, so you don't have to rush yourself in the very last minute. Any questions on preparing the budget so far? Any question on preparing budget, or any advice, or any comment, or any experience that any of you might have that want to share with others? Yeah, one of the advices I heard from one of the participants was the difference between the actual price and the actual price for the instrument by the company and the delivery cost. And some people mentioned like 15% as a number that they think is suitable to be added. And again, you know, if you could get that directly from a company that will deliver the instrument all the way to your lab, that will be even better. So if you can get that actual number and you don't have to speculate, that will be even much better. Any question or advice or comment? Okay, you guys such a quiet group. Any question? Brahim, do you have any comment?
No, thank you very much, Dr. Said, for your presentation. I'm sorry, I'm having a cold. Thank you again for your time, Dr. Said. Please.
No, we're not done yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just saw you unmuted, so I thought you have a question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Brahim, with that. Okay, so budget is clear. Let's move on to the next step, which is preparing the Gantt chart. So what is the Gantt chart? Could you find templates for that? Do we need to use some consistent number that is consistent with the previous sections? And what can we do to be strategic about the Gantt chart? You would like your Gantt chart to be a well thought Gantt chart, meaning that you want it to show the reviewers that you actually have spent quite some time putting the Gantt chart together, because this is the timeline. This is the timeline. This is what is going to be done and when it's going to be done. What is the starting date? What is the end date for each main tasks? For each main task and for each of the subtasks that falls below it. So it's basically a bird's eye view of the project. It's a project management tool that visualize how the tasks or the events are going to take place against time. What is going to be done and when exactly. So it answers so many questions, and that shows how important it is. What are the various activities? So you list the activities and the sub-activities in details. When each of those activities are going to begin and end, and are they going to overlap with each other? And what? And that's very important, because if you have some sequential activities, they should not overlap. And again, the start and end date for every activity and also for the entire project. So these are the kind of information that you get from the Gantt chart. And if these things are messed up, that's not going to be good for you. You want these things to be very clear, very well thought, and make sense to what you are proposing to do. Use the provided template. If there is a provided template, you should use it. If there is not one that you can locate yourself, maybe you can ask about it. We talked in the last two sessions about the importance of redundance, and we here mean the appropriate redundance, the good redundance, which means you start with knowledge gaps, transform them into objectives, break them down into sub-objectives, translate the objectives into tasks, break them down, even break them down if needed, further break them down, put the details. So we have a story that we have been telling all through, and we need to here to maintain the same consistency style. So if you have organized your knowledge gaps logically from the beginning, everything is going to be logical throughout the project. So it's good to have that advantage very early on, because it's going to be a very huge benefit that you will carry on every single section of your proposal. So for your Gantt chart, you want the tasks to be matching exactly what is mentioned in the detailed research approach. So basically, it's gonna be the simple list, or the statement of research approach, which is the list with the dates, starting date and ending date, and with the idea that probably they should be organized in some logical way. Be strategic. Be strategic in terms of selecting the starting and end dates for activities. So if you have an activity that carries some risk of being finished on time, maybe it would be wise to give yourself some room there to make sure that you will meet the end date. Also, be careful of ending activities right before the project submission time, because this time is going to be very busy. And if something went wrong, then you will be reporting something that's not complete. So if something is gonna, you expect to be ending right at the submission date of a report, probably you should give yourself a little bit of room right after the report. And keep the bird's eye view when selecting dates. Make sure you don't overlap activities that are not supposed to be overlapping with each other. If steps need to take place sequentially, then make sure you show that in the Gantt chart. If some activities will need to be simultaneous, then that should be clear again in the Gantt chart. And these are the kind of things that show reviewers if you actually thought about your project, how deep you thought about your project. Try to pay attention to the personal duties and how they are distributed over time, and the amount of time allowed for each person to work. For example, if you have students, make sure that you are distributing their personal duties over time in such a way that you don't require them in a certain period of time to be working all the time while they have exams or they have classes, or maybe putting activities in national holidays or stuff like that. These are the kind of things that show how deeply you thought about your project. If someone can work for like 3 hours on the project a day, it doesn't make any sense that you put like 3 simultaneous activities for that person in the same day, that each of which take more than the 3 hours. So make sure that you distribute the personal duties to match the personal, workloads for people. Any question? Any question? Okay, my quietest group ever. No questions at all. Okay, any comments? Okay. Well, let's move on then. The next step is after preparing the Gantt chart, we need to put together the project management plan. So what is the project management plan? What is the structure of the project management plan? Do we have to put a timeline? Do we have to consider some accountability measure there? So we need to pay attention to these components. Again, you need to, when people read your project management plan, they need to come up with the conclusion that this is an insightful management plan. So you actually, each component, you try to give it some thoughts and try to show reviewers that actually this is something that I thought about. This is something that I thought about, because the more you show them that you thought about things and you're trying to do things the right way, the more they're gonna trust you, the more they're gonna believe you, and the more they're gonna feel secure to give your projects high scores, and again to defend your project if it is actually competing or there is a choice between your project and another project. But if you don't show people that you actually thought about things and you actually are trying to do things the best way possible, they will not trust you that much and they will not feel secure. And if they don't feel secure, they will not be able to support you when needed. They will not be able to give you that full mark, which you might have to get funded. And also, if there is a competition between your project and a different project, they're not going to stand up and say, no, this is actually a well thought project or an insightful project. So what is the project management plan? It's simply the game plan. It is simply the game plan. It is how we put pieces together to deliver the tasks, how we use the instruments and facilities by personnel over time to deliver tasks. So it shows how you will aware of what you need to do, what you have, or maybe what you don't have, what you have and what you need to have in terms of what you actually have for instruments and facilities and what you need to build or buy, the personnel and the time, and how these things should be blended together to deliver the tasks in the best way possible. So here is your chance to act as the coach and to say, okay, here is the plan, who's gonna play defense, who's gonna be in the offense. So trying to not only to be the PI and a team member, but also to be a team leader. And again, the more you work on these components, the better. And also some insight from more experienced research team members is going to be very useful. We need consistency. We need consistency. Again, you need to be consistent to name things the way they have been named all across. You need to divide it down again to either work packages or tasks or activities, depending on how the template is calling them, and be consistent. So to take things all the way to the end, using the same terminology. We for the management plan, we actually are trying to put things in a chronological order. What's going to happen first, and then what's going to happen next. So you need to have some sort of a clear timeline. And if you have organized your research proposal from the beginning in such a way that you are putting the knowledge gaps that will have to be filled in first, then the knowledge gap that will need to be filled in second, then the knowledge gap that will need to be filled in third, you will have the objectives in that chronological order. You will have the research approach, the research objective in a chronological order, the research statement, the tasks in a chronological order, and then the detailed research approach in a chronological order. And then when you go to the Gantt chart, it's going to be in a chronological order. And when you go to the project management plan, again and again and again, it's going to be in a chronological order. With this, you actually will have things in the clearest way possible to reviewers. Actually, they will be able to present your proposal after finishing reading it, because you have used a very good level of redundance that made them actually understand your project very well. And also it's going to help you when writing, because you will know where the pieces fit in, which is going to be very, very good for you. So use the timeline. You also should put some clear ideas about the role of each team member in delivering each task. How you actually are going to measure the progress in that task. And this is one of the things that is actually listed in the Gantt chart. This is one of the columns in the Gantt chart. They say, okay, you list the tasks, the timeline, the progress measurement, and then how you're gonna evaluate it. And make sure that the rules of young research team includes a lot of development and learning opportunities. And they're actually, when they do something that they're not qualified for, they are conducting that under supervision. And the more you show intergenerational interaction, the better, in terms of maybe some of the PI activities are going to be supervised by the consultant. Some of the activities of research A are going to be under the supervision of the PI. Some of the activities of the research B is going to be under the supervision of the researcher A. These kind of team collaboration and experience flow are very, very, very appreciated in the research project. And if you are using undergraduate students, be careful when you assign them data collection, because if you're going to publish, the data collection must be supervised. You should not just assign undergraduate students to collect data and without receiving enough training and enough supervision. So these are the kind of things that we need to take and to pay close attention to when we put the project management plan. Any question about the project management plan? Any question about the project management plan? No questions at all in the chat section. Any thoughts that you guys might want to share? Share with us, or maybe any questions that you might have about the project management plan. Okay. So with this, we have successfully made it to the end of the third session. We talked about how to prepare the budget, the Gantt chart, and the project management plan. Next time, we're gonna share some thoughts about the submission process, the review process, if you happen to receive a conditionally acceptance status, contracting, and what happens between contracting and getting funded. In that session in details, we will add the project outcomes and impacts, then submission and review process, contracting, and getting funded, just to give you a heads up about the topics that we will cover next session. Well, thank you all so much for your attention. And I was hoping to get some questions from you guys today, but again, you have been a very quiet group, which is surprising to me. Probably you guys might have a lot of experience in that field, which I was hoping at least you might be willing to share some of the experience you have, if this is the case, with us. But looks like you guys are a very quiet group.